When her husband hit her in front of the guests, everyone froze. But no one expected her to say the following when she received a slap in the face from her husband in front of the guests. The table was served poorly. The wife told the audience that the crystal glass trembled in her hand. Red wine spilled on the tablecloth, leaving a dark spot. The room was silent. She took a deep breath, forcing herself not to flinch. Her hands gripped the table. She was sitting at the edge of the table, her nails digging into the fabric. The ringing slap in the face she had received from him was still fresh in her mind. He was standing in front of her, tall and confident, his irritation clear in his eyes. "Just do it right once," he said hoarsely, ominously. She slowly raised her gaze, the candlelight casting shadows that moved invisibly. Watching the light draft of Kolkati atmospheres. She swallowed a lump in her throat. "You know," she said softly, circled note. "The first time he hit me, I accidentally broke his favorite cup." She grinned, but her smile was cold. The guests froze, not daring to say a word. "I thought that I deserved it, that I wasn't careful." Her gaze slid over the faces of those present. Someone lowered his eyes. Someone nervously squeezed the glass. "Then he hit me for the over-salted soup for the badly ironed husband," soaked in tension. Fingers clenched into fists. "Shut up," he said through gritted teeth, but she didn't stop. "Now, she's hitting me in front of you." She took a step back, feeling the heat of resentment turn into chilling determination. "You know what?" The votes for the voices stopped completely. The silence was oppressive, as if everyone had stopped breathing. Her heart pounded. Lovro looked coldly at the guests, friends, and colleagues. "Relatives, listen up. If you don't say something now, she'll slowly run her fingers over your burning cheek. Next time, it'll be you too." Her husband flinched. Someone screamed. Then there was a crash. Someone pushed the chair too far away. It fell to the floor with a crash. The guests flinched, but no one. Her husband stiffened from his seat, his fingers white with rage. "That's enough," he said, his voice firm and unyielding. She looked at him with cold calmness. "Are you afraid?" He frowned, took a step forward, and said, "Stop talking this nonsense. No one wants to listen to your words." She interrupted, looking straight into his eyes. Her voice was low but assertive. The guests stared at her. I remained silent. I knew that I was right to be impatient. She ran her fingers over her wrist where his rough fingers had left a mark. "But today, you didn't do it behind a closed door." She looked around at the today. "You hit me in front of witnesses." He gritted his teeth and twitched his face. "You're making a big deal out of a molehill. No one cares about your complaints." She smiled. "Look at them." He looked around and suddenly noticed that the views had changed. Anger was evident. The guests no longer hid their eyes. The women clutched their glasses were tighter, and the men frowned, watching him intently. The air was heavy, as if before a thunderstorm. He clenched his fists, swallowing, feeling something slipping out of his hands. Then the first voice came out quiet but firm. "Let's not be silent." Another followed. Then another. "You should apologize, and not yet." He should. He answered for it. His husband turned pale and took a step back. Stan felt the people around him shrink. She watched as fear flashed in his eyes. He realized control was slipping out of his hands. The guests were no longer silent. Whispers became voices. Some jumped up. Their faces filled. "You are disgusted and angry. You think we will forget this?" one of the women asked coldly. "This has happened before." Someone's voice came out. He took another step back, bumped into the edge of the table, and his face twisted with anger. But his eyes showed doubt. He looked around, but there was no way out. His wife stood calmly in front of him. "I'm not going to tell you the truth." Her voice was soft, but Dinah made a cheating monster. She tilted her head. "Did I do it, or did you do it yourself?" The guests looked at him, waiting for an answer. He opened his mouth, but found no words. The weight of their gazes pressed down like a load. Someone got out the phone. "Might call the police." Her husband flinched. "You all lost it," he shouted, his voice breaking. But no one was listening. Someone was already calling. Someone was whispering. Someone was watching silently with his arms folded. His wife took a step forward. He didn't look so big anymore. He didn't look so strong. He looked hunted down. She looked into his eyes. He looked directly at her and said firmly, "Today, it's over." His lips twitched as if he wanted to say something, but the door swung open and two uniformed men and the police appeared at the threshold. The room froze. The air was heavy and tense. Her husband turned pale, his eyes darting from the guests to his wife, then to the officers. That misunderstanding began with a grin, but his voice was shaky. One of the officers took out a notebook. "We received a call about domestic violence." The caller fell silent, and then the neighbor raised her hand. Her husband turned sharply. His eyes flashed. "You have no right to interfere," he said. But the officer has already taken a step forward. "We have the right." His voice was firm and indifferent to attempts at "You must come with us, or we will use force." The husband clenched his fists. "It's none of your business. It's family." "You're mistaken." The second officer stepped closer, and the wife stood silent. She felt something. She felt fear leaving a void that would soon be filled with something new. The officer looked at her. "Do you want to apply?" All eyes were on her. She took a breath. Her husband looked at her. But now she spoke with a clear and unmistakable confidence. Her voice rang out, resounding like a bell in the silence. Her husband stood frozen, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. The guests exchanged glances, some nodding in approval. The officer, noting her response, looked up at her. "Are you ready to come with us and give evidence?" she asked. Her tone firm and decisive. Her husband, startled, shouted, "How can you do this to me?" The officers intercepted him before he could get close. "Calm down," one of them said firmly, wringing the handcuffs. "It's a mistake. She's lying. It's all a show." But no one else was listening to him. The guests moved away as if they were afraid of catching him. His wife looked at him with rage, feeling her heart beating steadily and calmly for the first time in many years. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," she said firmly. His eyes darted, but they no longer had power over her. They led him to the exit. He turned around for the last time, but found no pity or fear in her eyes, only freedom. The door closed behind them. There was silence. The warm light of the chandelier, the smell of wine and food, the guests. They were silent, as if they had not yet realized what had just happened. The wife exhaled. "Does anyone want more wine?" A soft but sincere laugh erupted. The tension in the air evaporated. One of the women stood up and embraced her. "You're strong," she whispered. Her wife smiled. Yes. Now she knew it. The guests began to stir. As if waking up from a long sleep. Someone poured himself a drink. Someone carefully adjusted the chair waiting for her. She fell down during the commotion. The air was no longer heavy, it was clean and free. The wife ran her fingers across her cheek. It stung, but the pain seemed distant, almost insignificant. The silence that she had endured for years was more painful now. It was broken. The neighbor came closer and squeezed her hand. "If you need something, just say it," she said. She nodded, feeling the warmth of someone. The door opened again. The policeman looked inside. "We'll be right back for you." She nodded. indicating that the paperwork was ready. Then she took a deep breath, ready for what was to come. She knew things were different. She was different, free. When the door closed, she raised her glass to the new life ahead. The guests looked at each other. Then, one by one, raised their glasses. This was the moment she realized her life was just beginning. With glasses in hand, they looked at each other differently. They weren't just guests, acquaintances, or colleagues. They were people who had witnessed something important. This is the end of the line. Something changed her life and their own. There was a faint smell of spilled wine in the air, but now it smelled of new beginnings. My wife ran her finger along the edge of the glass. Listening to its melodious ringing, she said softly, without looking at anyone, "I always thought there was no way out. He had always convinced me." Today, I saw that there was always a way out. She looked up. She just needed to take a step. The neighbor smiled, nodded slightly. "You took more than a step. You broke the wall." The wife thought for a moment, then grinned and ruined the dinner party. Someone laughed. A warm, real laugh. The man at the far end of the table said, "Raise your glass to us." "To you," she corrected him. She met each of their eyes directly. When the glasses met again in a clink, she knew there was no turning back, and it didn't frighten her at all. The laughter at the table sounded free and strained, as if everyone had just realized how heavy the silence had become. With every sip of wine and every word of encouragement, she was relieved of the burden she had been carrying for so many years. Tomorrow, she will be waiting for him to make a move. She knows he will not give up easily. He will try to intimidate and manipulate her, but she won't fall for it. She's not afraid. "Do you want to spend the night?" one of the guests asked, his voice careful. "I don't know yet. I have a spare room," the neighbor suggested quietly. "Who?" she added. She felt a surge of support from all sides. A warm smile spread across her face as she looked at these people. Their kind eyes made her realize that she was not alone. She stood up from her chair, her legs shaking with confidence. "Thank you," she said. Circle. "I understood that if I left, I would lose everything." She took a breath, but her gaze was firm. "I just bought everything." At that moment, a fresh night wind blew outside the window, as if fate itself welcomed her new path. The wind slightly blew into Kolik Manovo's Dukvin. Now, the guests began to rise from the table. Someone helped collect the dishes. Someone stood nearby silently, expressing support. No one else shopped. "I don't want you to stay here alone." My wife looked at her apartment. It was so familiar. But now, every object was a stranger to her. She had endured years of pain and years of silence. She nodded. "And they left." She didn't bring anything with her, only the coat hanging by the door. She didn't need anything else. When she stepped out of the door, she didn't even turn around. The door closed behind her, and with it, all the night was ahead. She was the unknown, but she smiled for the first time in a long time. Everything depended on her. She took a step forward, feeling the cold night air touch her skin. "This cold felt refreshing and awakened me." My neighbor was walking next to me. Her footsteps sounded soft. "I can hear how you feel," she asked, looking directly into her wife's eyes. The wife paused, considering her response. She would have lied if she had answered normally. But now there was no point in lying. She exhaled slowly and said, honestly, "Free." The neighbor nodded her head in agreement and smiled slightly. They went down the stairs, each step into a new life. The past was left behind, and a world of uncertainty lay ahead. "You are not alone," she said. The neighbor suddenly said, squeezing her hand. His wife looked at her and felt that outside the city was lit up at night, though it didn't seem far away. It was calling her forward. She took a deep breath and stepped out into the new day. The night air was cool, but there was a hint of life in it. She felt freedom. Every street lamp, every light in the windows of the houses, everything seemed new, as if the world had just been reborn. She walked along the sidewalk, feeling her body grow lighter with each step. The past no longer pulled her back. A neighbor walked next to her without asking any questions. He was just there. It was valuable. "Do you want to talk?" she asked quietly. "No, now. I just want to go ahead." They turned the corner. In front of them, the street was lit up with neon signs. People were walking back and forth, laughing, talking, living their lives. My wife stopped. She was looking at them as if for the first time. Before, she had lived in a cage. Now the cage was gone. She could go anywhere, do anything. And the same time was breathtaking. The neighbor asked, and the wife looked ahead. A new day, a new life. She smiled at the future, ready to take a step forward. She left everything that had held her down before. With each step, her heart beat more strongly. She no longer felt lost. The world that once seemed like a narrow corridor now has plans, strength, and neighbors casting a warm glow. The wife glanced at her and thought about her plans, which depended on another person's mood and desires. Now, she could choose. The thought was frightening but also exciting. "I don't know," she answered honestly, "but I will find my way." The neighbor nodded and smiled, saying, "You won't be alone." The wife looked at her and realized how important these words were. The night was warm. The air was cool, but she felt invigorated. She was no longer a prisoner. She was the mistress of her life. In this world full of possibilities, she knew she could manage. The light ahead called her forward, and she went. The street lamps shone on the paths dotted with the first autumn leaves. The air smelled fresh, as if nature itself was clearing her path. Her wife stopped looking up at the night. The sky was awash with stars, each one a beacon of hope, telling her that she was on the right track. Her neighbor, unspoken but present, motioned her to join him on the bench. Her wife, longing for this moment of pause, finally surrendered to it, sinking down for the first time in a long time. "Are you happy?" the neighbor asked, his voice a quiet but discernible presence. The wife pondered the question, searching for an answer that eluded her. She didn't know how to feel, but she knew she was open to it. "I knew exactly what I felt now that I'm free," she said confidently. "Happiness awaits." The neighbor nodded in agreement. Davos was satisfied with the answer. My wife closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and felt the weight that had weighed on her for so many years lift. The night was warm, the future unknown, but for the first time, it did not frighten her. She smiled. Tomorrow, her new life would begin, and she was ready to take the first step.